Hello, everyone. Pranam to all of you. You're most welcome to our last meeting for 2023. So the topic that was given by the sage was living in the light of consciousness. So that's an interesting topic. But when we just look at the title itself, you see, living in the light of consciousness. Basically, that is ultimately what a spiritual aspirant is seeking in one's spiritual journey. So, just some thoughts were coming, today in the afternoon. Uh, I'll present them. When you see the sun sets and it's actually dark, then what happens? Say you want to study or you want to cook a meal, so you switch on the light, and then you see living in that light. Basically, you undertake your studies, cook your meal, watch the television or whatever activity you want to do. So anyhow. Just another beautiful thought comes here that when you go to sleep, then we are actually sleeping in the light of that darkness. So it also plays its role. Then when we wake up in the morning, you see it's the sun and the sunshine, and the whole day we pass living in the light of the sun. So, drawing these parallels or similarities, you see, what we have got to look at is that when we say living in the light of consciousness, anyway, you see, you got to look at one thing that even as we are having this discussion, unless we are conscious of what is actually being discussed, you see, this satsang or any activity, you see, cannot actually take place. Because look at one thing, whatever a human being or individual undertakes, the first thing that actually precedes everything, as Sage Ramana has beautifully taught, nearly for 50 years, you see, while living in Arunachalam, that you see, you have to be conscious of whatever activity is being undertaken, whether it's conscious of thoughts, conscious of feelings, conscious of whatever activity you are actually undertaking. So we cannot really function without the presence of this Almighty God or the ever present changeless reality, which is actually consciousness. So, you see, whether we are consciously living in the light of consciousness or non-consciously active, still that light of consciousness is actually present. But what is actually meant by living in the light of consciousness? What actually that leads to is, you see, normally when we look upon ourselves, we are an image. And the way an image is active is that the image is always active with images. Otherwise, it thinks that it has become lifeless. But actually, the truth is, you see, all these great sages, whether it's Ramakrishna or it is Rishi Master Byansa Duno, or it is Ramana Maharishi, or it is Lord Buddha, or it is actually Jesus. You see, though they were present as human beings, but to them, whatever they were actually dealing with, it didn't matter, whether it's a tree or it's a bird or it's actually human beings. To them, everything actually was none other than that changeless reality, consciousness. And you see, no matter how consciousness appeared, in whatever image it appeared, they never lost touch with this, that they're only and always dealing with consciousness. You see, that's why you see one of the very beautiful things about Sage Ramana's presence and teaching was that he was very silent. he used to just look at the individual, and then sometimes he will not give any answers. And when he answered, what was actually going on within the sage was that this is actually consciousness presenting itself in whatever form that individual is and whatever that question is. So he actually has got to answer to consciousness. So basically, living in the light of consciousness directly means that you are always observant, you always perceive the presence of consciousness, right? So that's basically where your spiritual journey actually culminates. So I won't go any further with this. We can have a discussion later. I'll request Neeru to give us a short talk, and then followed by Vijay ji. Neeru, can you please take over?
Thank you, Milji. And thanks to the grace and humble pranam to Sage Sri Ramana Maharji, Rishi Ji, Master BN, and all sages of the past, present, and future. Living in the light of consciousness is different from how we know consciousness in layman terms. In layman terms, consciousness refers to our awareness, our experience of the world around us, our thoughts, emotions, and our own existence. It's what makes us feel alive and sentient. You may imagine consciousness as the inner movie screen, let's say, where your experiences, thoughts, and emotions are projected like a continuous stream from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. But when Sage Ramana says light of consciousness, that is a deeper aspect of consciousness, which means consciousness is the ultimate reality, which is an undifferentiated, formless, and unchanging state. It's the substratum from which everything arises. It means the manifestation of all forms and shapes. And also the normal consciousness that we know in layman terms, such as the conscious experience of the thoughts, emotions, and awareness of what's happening around us. So all arises from consciousness. In this sense, consciousness is also interchangeably stated as pure awareness or self awareness or self. Living in the light of consciousness means remaining aware of this deeper sense of consciousness that is making you aware of your personal identity, your relationship to your family, friends, colleagues, and other entities, etc. It basically means two things. Firstly, to realize that one's true nature is consciousness. You are not really your body, your thoughts, emotions, or experiences, but you are really this consciousness. And the body and mind springs out from this. Likewise, others are also not really body mind, they are consciousness. And secondly, being constantly aware of this reality in day to day activities also. So, living in the light of consciousness is a shift of standpoint from living as a body mind limited personal identity to living in oneness with the all encompassing consciousness. Now, the question is, do we know what our reality is? Do we remember in the hustle and bustle of life that in fact we are consciousness and the personality that we hold on to is actually a fiction? And do we consciously experience also this underlying consciousness, like we experience a sensation Or um, we know consciousness like we know when we are thinking a thought or we are talking to someone. In our professional life, we are conscious of the work we complete. In our personal life, we are conscious of our relationships. And at the individual level, we are conscious of our work, our habits, interests. As we are conscious of the things happening outside us and inside us, like our thoughts and emotions, we should be equally conscious of the underlying consciousness with which we become conscious of all that we are conscious of. So, living in the light of consciousness means noticing the consciousness as the prime element, recognizing that is the source, and view this consciousness at the front of all our conscious experiences, like doing a physical activity or thinking a thought. Make this underlying consciousness the focus of experience and make the objects of experience, like the thoughts and emotions or conversations with others, etc., the objects of experience as secondary elements in the experience. Sage says consciousness is like the screen and the world is like the pictures on it. You can see the pictures only so long as there is a screen. So once we pay attention to the screen of consciousness, it will be impossible to not notice the screen. Rather, screen of consciousness will attract more attention than the pictures appearing on it. You will be aware that consciousness is the truth of all objects you experience, gross and subtle. You will realize that without consciousness, no experience can be experienced. It does not require a lot of effort to see the screen when watching a movie. You just need a bit of attention to become aware that there is a screen behind the pictures. Likewise, it just requires a bit of attention to realize that whatever we see, whatever we hear, taste, or experience, this consciousness is omnipresent in all. And due to the presence of this consciousness, the body and mind is conscious of the objects. With consistent practice, the screen of consciousness will come to the foreground, and images like thoughts, feelings, sensations, etc., will recede into the background. I recall one transmission of Sage, which was communicated by Anil ji a couple of years ago in one satsang at Maryland's in Sydney, on how important it is to live in the light of consciousness. So the transmission goes like this. As I sit here calmly and view the scene in front of me in the light of self awareness, I am in the natural state of self guidance. I intuitively know this state never leaves me. This is like the essence of the teaching of sage. The message, it's really very clear that basically self-abidance is living in the light of consciousness. According to the advice by the sage, we should not view things in the light of ego personality. What we mean when we say the light of ego personality, um, it's like, how we as ego personality means living in a personal identity. So when we are um, in a personal identity as a primary mode, then we will also see others as ego personalities only. So what sage is guiding us is we should view everything in the light of consciousness, because that is the essence of the ego personality. Means it's not a body mind based individual watching, when we are, because in this transmission sage is talking about a view. So what is in front of us, what is inside us. So it's not a body mind based individual that is watching, but it is consciousness itself that is watching. And Sage also says that intuitively we are this consciousness. Our intellect ingrains the personal identity in us. But as this body mind limited consciousness idea is destroyed, consciousness alone remains. And actually, that has always been. It is due to our ignorance we don't realize that it is there. Consciousness is that which is, that is all that can be said of it. So, from the standpoint of consciousness, one perceives not the surface appearance, but the inner reality. Viewing the scene in the light of self awareness means shifting our focus from just the external world to an internal vantage point, means being conscious of the underlying consciousness. Um, like, imagine this deeper consciousness as the guiding light that illuminates our perception. Perceiving the external world from the standpoint of this consciousness is like stepping back and witnessing both the outer experiences and our internal reactions to those experiences as well. So, what we are watching, and then the perception that develops in our mind based on, let's say, sensory perception, um, or based on, let's say, in some situation, what action we are going to take. So, our response. So what the perception is based on the senses, let's say, and then the response which comes from the intellect, like a thought comes, like a plan develops. So both the outer experiences and our internal reactions to those experiences, uh, all are this underlying consciousness. When we view anything from the perspective of its pure nature, then whatever is, wherever is, and however is, all is consciousness. Another point is what comes in the view for the watching. It's not just the external things as we just discussed. We sense like people, scenery, bird, road, sky, but also the internal stuff like feelings, thoughts, sensations, etc. So everything that appears in the view externally and internally is none other than the consciousness when seen with the lens of reality. To attain a state that we are able to live in the light of consciousness, we should investigate this thing in us that appears calling itself I. The search needs to be intense and without a stopping or pause. Let's say if a stray splinter of wood has pierced the gums, does the tongue keep quiet until it has been extracted? No. So, constant, intense effort is absolutely necessary, right up until the moment of self realization. If someone wants to see the clear sky, the clouds have to be rolled away. So, how can we integrate self inquiry into our daily life? Um, Meditation, reflection, and contemplation certainly work, but seeking the grace of Guru is equally important. Um, when we talk about meditation, let's say, um, what normally we think that meditation is something like setting a time period like 30 minutes or 1 hour, uh, but it's not like that. Meditating on consciousness is like a continuous process. During the waking state, as frequently as possible, meditating on self and contemplating on our true nature is necessary. So that's why you may not even call it a meditation, and because normally meditating would mean sitting quiet, not engaging with any activity like they recommend in yoga. So we can meditate on self while completing our daily activities also. For example, interacting with our family members, or co-workers also. Anybody we see on the street or whom we meet is none other than the pure consciousness. While interacting with them as a normal person, also on the surface, inside us, our standpoint should be the underlying consciousness. Then it is consciousness interacting with consciousness. And what is transacted between them is also consciousness. For example, any experience that you share with other person, the communication that occurs is also a form of consciousness, as nothing exists outside of consciousness. So in this way, being mindful of what we are doing is necessary. So pay full attention to the consciousness underlying every activity, like walking, eating, for example, feeling the texture of food we eat, or the movement of body, and the sights and sounds that we hear during the walk. For these practices, developing a habit of living in the present moment is also crucial. So cultivate the habit of being fully present in whatever we do. When we focus on the task at hand without dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, we bring a state of heightened awareness to our actions. So one should have an attitude of gratitude also for the present moment and all the experiences it holds. One thing more can help us in developing the practice of living in the light of consciousness is like maintaining a reflective journal or a diary uh, to advance our self inquiry. So we could write about our experiences, our thoughts, emotions, and reflect on how we responded to those different situations throughout the day. When we read our reflections, we relate more to our journey, and that deepens our connection with the underlying consciousness. This is something like a suggestion because I have done this in my spiritual quest, and I still keep reading my notes, and that's how we relate more to what's happening throughout the along the path and the developments that occur, and yeah, so it's all really connecting more to the uh, the progress. So that's all I think I can share some thoughts, some feelings and ideas about how to live in the light of consciousness. And now I'll request Vijay to move the satsang forward. Yes, thank you so much. Mm.
Thank you, Neeruji. Vijayji?
Om everyone. So we'll just start off with 3 ohms. Om. Om. This month is a very auspicious month, as is every other month, but it is more so because this month is a month where God as Mother is propitiated in the form of a festival called Navaratri, where God as Mother is propitiated in her form for 9 days, culminating in the 10th day, which is Vijaya Dashami. The reason for this and the relationship of this with the subject matter, which is living in the light of consciousness, will become evident as we go further in this discussion. So I'll start off with a small propitiation to Goddess as Mother. सर्वमङ्गलमाङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोऽस्तुते सृष्टिस्थितिविनाशानां शक्तिभूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमयी नारायणी नमोऽस्तुते शरणागत दीनार्थ परित्राण परायणे सर्वस्यार्ति हरे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते. So with that small invocation, we'll just discuss about the reasons for this propitiation of goddess as mother. But why do we do that? The reason is because within duality, as in subject object relationship in limited manifestation, there is a certain nature of perception that is there. In reality, the way of perceiving and perception is always as it is and not as subject object. Awareness only perceives as is. But due to this ignorance that is there, which is an ephemeral thing, which is by itself, the nature is ephemeral. There is a doership attachment that I am doing it. And because of that, rather than saying the experience of perceiving is there, the attachment happens, doership happens, and we say, I am perceiving so and so this object. The object may be there, object is there, object doesn't disappear. Bhagwan Raman Maharshi, in conversation with aspirants and devotees who came to the ashram, didn't say he didn't see the object. The object was there. The devotee or the person in front was there. But there was no objectness to that object. So he could see no other. He always said that there is no other because there was no otherness. The object perceiving of the object was there, not as I am perceiving the object. There is a slight difference. It's the way in which perception happens. To be able to remove that and seeing awareness as awareness itself, being aware of awareness is the subject matter, which then culminates in living in the light of consciousness. With that background, let us give a backdrop of this Navaratri festival, which relates to this wrong notion that I am this body, mind, intellect, and how that I am this body, mind, intellect can be removed. So essentially, it is a grace. As we always say, grace is very, very important. So the grace of mother as goddess as mother, who is always perennially, eternally absorbed in moksha siddhi, in eternal awareness, supreme. There's a supreme scripture which is written called Durga Saptashati, which has got 700 verses, or it's also called the Devi Mahatmya or the Chandi Path in the Bengal region. So this supreme Shakti is the all in all, the eternal, pure Parabrahma Tattva, the primal force of creation. She is propitiated in the form of Adi Shakti, Mahashakti, and Parashakti. Shakti is power. Adi Shakti means the primal power. Mahashakti is the great power. And Parashakti means the transcendental power. So because she is the source, the sustainer, and the ultimate cause of the dissolution, the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe. Sarvam Shaktimayam Jagat is what she is known as. She is the potential, transcendental, unmanifested power, ever existent, eternal, pure, absolute awareness. But she is also immanent in manifestation as the dynamic aspect of this universe, as object as well. So she is also the changeless as well as the changing, the unmanifested as well as the manifest. That's why she is propitiated as Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Shakti Rupena Samstita Namastasye 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 Namo Namaha, which means she's propitiated as that ever as exist in reality, who's pervading everything as the Shakti aspect, the power aspect, as the manifested aspect. So, how does she, with her eternal grace, remove the ignorance from this aspirant, the devotee who's striving to see awareness as it is rather than I am perceiving this or that, I am so and so. The devotee is all the time struggling and wanting to. So the grace of the mother comes into play. So the mother as goddess, goddess as mother is propitiated in the first 3 days in the form of Mahadurga, who sits strident on a lion, and the human, the body, mind, intellect is pervaded by three gunas, as it were, three aspects or three tendencies. They're called the tamoguna, rajoguna, and sattva-guna. Tamoguna are those tendencies which are gross, which are basic, which consist of sloth, inertia, negativity, laziness, etc. She vanquishes, she helps with her grace, she vanquishes these so-called, they are perceived as demons within the mind, and she goes and slays and removes these demons. They are called Madhu and Kaitaba, and they're slayed in the text. And she, in the first 3 days, she removes the sloth, negativity, and laziness with her grace. In the next three, then in the same 3 days, she is also fighting another demon, which is the tamoguna, and then you have the rajoguna. Rajoguna consists of anger, hatred, greed, jealousy, the fire aspect. And she slays this demon of the mind, which is called Mahishasura. And when she slays that Mahishasura, greed, anger, hatred is removed. Then it transcends to the next one, which is called the Sattva Guna, which are the finer aspects, the finer tendencies which are latent. Normally, the Rajoguna and the Tamoguna are predominant, and the Sattva Guna is latent because they are more subtle. When the Tamoguna and the anger, hatred, greed all are removed, the latent tendencies rise up to the surface, which are the finer aspects to it, which are called vanity, ego, desires, etc. They are represented by these demons called Shumba Nishumba. But they need to be slayed because desires are very strong in human beings. And when she is propitiated, Ma Durga, she actually invokes Ma Kali, Mahakali, in a ferocious form, because there is this demon, the demon of desires, called Rakta Bij. And the story goes that whenever that demon's head of desire is slayed and removed by Mother Kali, one desire, when it is removed, a drop of blood falls down on the ground and another desire props up, as is in the head of every mind of every person who considers himself or herself as this ego mind. I am this, I am that. So when this drop of blood falls on the ground, another desire arises. So as desires are removed, so also new desires crop up. That is what is the experience of everyone. So Ma Kali comes in a ferocious form to scoop up the desire of blood of desire, that before it falls on the ground and before another desire can prop up, she scoops up that desire and vanquishes desire completely. So Rakta Bij, the demon of desire, is slayed. When desires are completely removed, the ego, vanity, ego, I, desires all are gone. Then the fickle mindedness, the vikshepa, and the cloud, the veil of ignorance called avarana, also disappears. When that is done, she is seen as that that's the first 3 days. The next 3 days she's propitiated as Mahalakshmi. Mahalakshmi is the goddess of prosperity. Prosperity not in the case of only wealth, but prosperity as in prosperity of Saubhagya, everything. She's propitiated in what is called the Ashtalakshmi aspect, 8 aspects of food, wealth, Jaya, Virya, vitality, arts and sciences, and everything. She's propitiated in 8 different forms. So it's basically propitiating, and she graces the devotee because all these lower desires and everything is removed. She blesses the devotee and graces the devotee with the spiritual light of wisdom, wealth of wisdom in her form of Ashtalakshmi. And the last 3 days, the seventh, eighth, and ninth day, she's propitiated as Maha Saraswati. And Maha Saraswati is the absolute purity aspect, the transcendental aspect, the essence in manifestation. She's called the Omkara Rupa with her Veena in her hand. So the Veena signifies Omkar because the sound that emanates is the primordial sound of existence in eternity. When she blesses all these 3 goddesses as mother, bless the devotee up to the 9th day. On the 10th day, it culminates in what is called Vijaya Dashami. Vijaya means success. Dashami means 10th, wherein the changing dissolves and is absorbed into the changeless. Because the changing and the changeless are one and the same. The immanent and the transcendental are one, and one gets absorbed in the light of consciousness, as it were. Now, when with the backdrop of this propitiation of goddess as mother, Let us see how the aspirant who's steeped with that limited feeling of I am this and I am that and I am perceiving this as objects, and there is that subject object relationship at all times. How does that get transcended? Propitiating the goddess as mother is one aspect where it is the devotion that is, placed at the feet of goddess, and the aspirant says you are that, all is thine. That is one aspect. Bhakti yoga, it's called cosmic love. But then there is also an aspect of the jnana marga, which is the inquiry. And when one inquires, one sees that at the moment as we are, this speaking is happening, this sharing is happening. This sharing is in pure awareness. Awareness is aware of itself without any connotations. Objects appear as they are. Speaking happens as it were. There is no I am speaking and you are listening. Speaking is happening, hearing is happening. Perception is all there is. One has to inquire and check and go deep within to find out, is this what is being said? Is it true? Because that experience has to be an experience of that perception, not as I am perceiving, but perception just as it is. Space is just space. When objects are filled in that space, space doesn't get affected. So also awareness, when thoughts are within awareness, awareness doesn't get affected. But when there is this aspect of doership, a wrong notion, it's an illusion anyway. It is non existent. That I am doing it, it causes strife. That is the issue. A wrong connotation that I am doing this. There is no I. There is only perception. There is only awareness. Whether, whether this awake state, sleep state, dream state, or deep sleep state. No one can ever say that I don't have the experience of not being aware. No one can ever say that. Awareness has always been, is always is, and ever always will be, even if that is considered as within space time continuum. The space time continuum is also just a conception of the mind that has been created. Because awareness is timeless, eternity. It is spaceless. It's pure existence. That's why it's called Sat Chit Ananda. And Jagat Guru Adi Shankaracharya, as we have discussed in the past, said that Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva na Paraha, which means that the Brahman, which is eternal consciousness, pure awareness is the truth. This Jagat, this manifestation is a mithya. It's a phenomena within existence. But the the limited entity and Brahman are no different. The changing and the changeless are one and the same. The unmanifested and manifested are one and the same. Awareness perceives itself as awareness. There is no I am perceiving so and so. I am awareness. No one can say I am living in this light of pure consciousness. It is only living in the light of pure consciousness, pure awareness. Because living happens. There is only living. There is only awareness. There is no I. The moment there is an I, the subject object and the relationship starts. The whole aspect of this, even now, as the speaking is happening, is that there is only awareness, which is living, hearing, seeing. There is no I attachment to that. So the analogy which we always speak about is that the screen and the objects on it. So the screen is the infinite screen, not the screen that you see in a theater, but the infinite screen of existence. And the objects that are there, that appear, as it were, on that screen, are part of the screen. But the screen doesn't get affected by the objects on the screen. The objects appear and objects disappear. The images keep changing. It is not as if somebody is watching and being aware. The screen as awareness is actually perceiving itself as objects on the screen of consciousness, on the screen of awareness. There is no entity who can arrogate itself by saying that I am perceiving the objects. This is the fundamental truth. There is no other truth but this. So this practice, this inquiry, this method that um, Bhagwan Raman Maharshi has recommended is the inquiry of who am I? He said, at least find out who this. We keep referring to this I. Who is this I? What is this I? Where from does this I arise? When that I is sought, there will there is the one finds there is no other I. There is no I. There is only awareness. And then functioning happens as awareness. Living happens as living in the light of consciousness. The word light is used more so to depict the removal of darkness, the ignorance that is there, the avarana, that is the veil of ignorance that is there, is due to the darkness of ignorance. So the light of consciousness signifies the light that removes the darkness. The moment light comes in, darkness is gone. Once the clarity of perception happens with the grace of that Parabrahma Tattva, with the grace of that pure awareness, that eternity, perception happens through the eye of eternity, not through this limited eye of the body individual. But perception happens through the eye of eternity. And then awareness functions, as it were. That is called living in the light of pure awareness. That is called Sat Chit Ananda, which is Sat, which is existence, Chit, which is consciousness, Ananda is the bliss, that awareness, pure awareness, that is ever existent, ever real, ever pure. Sat Chit Ananda. It is, it is here and now, because awareness always is. But it is termed as a process because there is a veil of ignorance that is there within the framework of time, space, time continuum, which is also an illusion, and that requires so called, as it were, time. And so one has to follow that process and go through the rigmarole of doing whatever one needs to do in life, but at the same time do one's sadhana with intensity. When that intensity is there, grace descends. It has no choice but to descend. And that clarity is revealed. The moment ignorance, ego drops away, awareness as which always is here and now is just revealed. That is the truth. And that is the only truth. Let us all strive and use these techniques to perceive and be aware of awareness, as it were. We are always aware, but is one aware of being aware? Silence is what Bhagwan Raman Maharshi always taught. But words are spoken just to provide some sort of solace to the mind. Essentially, words are not even required. But when the inquiry happens and the inquiry goes deeper and deeper, silence reveals itself as pure awareness. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Thank you, Vijayji. That's quite beautifully expressed, living in the light of consciousness. So just coming to a conclusion, you see, there's a beautiful statement that we are always conscious of that which changes. Can we be conscious of that which does not change? And when you look at it, basically, in this lifetime, we are always living in our presence, isn't it? If our presence is not there as a so-called individual or the personality, then basically nothing then can be undertaken as being that individual. But you see, living in our presence, even that somebody is actually telling us we are actually living presence, and that which is telling us is basically shedding light on this again is the light of consciousness, isn't it? Because we are conscious that we are living in our presence. So that is the shift which is required, that we are actually living in the presence of consciousness rather than living in our presence. That is the truth. The secondary part, living in our presence, goes away, but the primary part, you see, the light of consciousness that always stays. So again, thank you to Neeruji and Vijayji and to all of you for having attended this satsang. Thank you very much.